Pick the worst rendition
What is
of all
the
time.
absolute crappiest crap? And I have to say it's that Superman movie where they made like Superman Returns.
Yeah,
that's the worst.
I have never made it through that. I've fallen asleep 3
So
times trying
bad.
to watch that.
There's also the original Superman 3 with Richard Pryor.
Yeah, that one's not the
But that's
greatest.
the one that's like everybody
I
says
wouldn't
is
put
underrated.
that as the worst.
Yeah.
But Blank Man, that may be the best one of all time.
All
I
right.
think we can agree on that.
But Iron Man is the best.
Okay. Hello. This is Between the Streams. This is our weekly entertainment podcast where we talk about movies and television, everything going on in the world of that. And today we've got a lot of stuff to get to. As usual, we're going to go through a bunch of different things to talk about, kind of update you on some happenings with Netflix, update you on some new shows that are out that you should maybe be checking out. And we want to get your questions and comments throughout this entire episode. And we started off with like a main question today because, of course, Spider-Man just came out. We're going to be talking about Marvel and Spider-Man, but we wanted to see what you thought is the best superhero movie of all time. And that's kind of what we were just having a discussion of.
And then promptly tell us what's the worst.
Yeah, and the worst as well. So I'm Greg Nibbler.
I'm Ryan Juanita.
And again, join us if you're watching live on Facebook and YouTube. Let us know your comments on that, what you think the best superhero movie of all time is, because Spider-Man is out right now.
Yeah.
And
Spider-Man's like now in contention.
I'm seeing some comments here. Keelan says, "Are you trying to trigger me on figuring out what the best superhero movie of all time is?"
It can give you a seizure if you're not careful. If you think too hard, you could get a seizure.
It's possible, yeah. Mary is saying all the Incredible Hulks. So,
well, that's an interesting choice because there's like 7 different Hulks.
Well, there's 2 movies.
Yeah.
2 different movies. The one they just kind of pretended never happened.
Right.
And then you had Edward Norton, which they also
kind of pretended didn't happen.
I
And
mean,
then they reintroduced him as Mark Ruffalo in Avengers.
Right,
Which
yeah.
we were saying Avengers is a really good choice because it's all of them.
Yeah.
And try to watch that scene where they all get together in the middle of the square and they're all like
Yeah.
badass and the camera moves out and not like get a little bit of superhero chills.
Right.
It's still pretty great.
It's still good.
It's we've all seen it like a dozen times, I would say, or I have.
Yeah, and okay, we're getting some really a lot of comments coming in.
All right,
here.
what do
This
we
is-
got?
Shockingly, people have opinions about superhero movies. So,
No.
Again, we're talking about what's the best superhero movie of
Yeah.
all time. John says, I don't know if I should say it because it is a spoiler. Well, you know what? It's a 20-year-old movie. Unbreakable. I can.
Okay.
Unbreakable is.
I mean, that
great
is.
movie.
I would say that's the weirdest superhero movie, or
Yeah.
the most unsuperhero movie.
Yeah, I do love that movie.
Yeah, it's good. It's weird. It's good.
On the other end, worst, Halle Berry's Black Cat. That was pretty bad.
Catwoman, you mean?
Or Catwoman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Catwoman.
Yeah.
So that one.
There is a black cat. Or
There
no,
is.
Black Sable,
uh,
Silver Sable,
Silver Sable
and Black Cat.
And Black Cat. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that is going to be one.
That's a
coming up.
whole another thing.
Russell says Iron Man best one.
Iron
Johnny
Man.
Howard the Duck.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there we
it's
go.
the reason Iron Man is a good choice. I would say, objectively,
Okay,
is that
so
it
Iron Man is
did
your-
strike the entire MCU. It started it all, and if
Yeah.
not for the MCU. Who's to say when DC would have come back to their movies? I mean, some would say that's for better or for worse, but that's what Iron Man really does have going for it. Plus, Robert Downey Jr. just shows that you can have liveliness in a character that's not Batman.
Yeah.
that's a superhero, and we hadn't really seen that before. As far as a lot, I mean. Never say never. There's probably someone who's going to call up a movie where we'd seen it before, but that was a really prime example of where somebody brought a lot of character to the role.
Right.
And it was kind of Robert Downey Jr.'s comeback. I just think there's a lot of reasons why Iron Man is a good choice.
See, and I think a lot of people, as far as when you specifically talk about the Marvel universe, might be going for a Captain America movie because
Yeah.
Captain America: Winter Soldier.
I enjoyed that.
Was a pretty amazing one. Will says Winter Soldier and/or Scott Pilgrim, Winter
Scott
Soldier.
Pilgrim, now that's a great choice. And
I didn't even
we
think
were
about
talking
that.
about that being Edgar Wright's best movie.
Okay.
And, Edgar Wright just came out with Baby Driver. Everyone's crazy about it. But Scott Pilgrim, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a phenomenal flick.
Captain America, yeah, and again, if you go all time, The Dark Knight might have to be my
The Dark
favorite.
Knight is a good choice.
Like,
and
just standalone superhero movie of all time.
But as we were saying before the film, it's almost like to me that those are not really superhero movies as much as they're sort of Chris Nolan's, like love letter to Batman. It's like his new way of doing it, and it's so different than anything that came before it. So I think that whole trilogy is a good. You could almost say that trilogy is its own corner of the superhero universe, and I think any of those are great choices.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean it's true.
It's Heath Ledger, let's be honest.
Heath
It's
Ledger was fantastic. Keelan says after 5 films, Spider-Man was finally done right, and I have not seen the new Spider-Man. I haven't had a chance to go see it yet. But looking at the reviews, let's talk about Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yes,
it's getting amazing reviews.
Yeah,
where we had on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think it's at 94%. It's somewhere around an 8, which is really good. You always have to remember the aggregate score is great, but you also have to know the average score. People averaged it around an 8, and that means it's a pretty stellar flick. Rick Marshall, our guy, says he thinks it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made, and this had a lot to overcome because they just did this with Andrew Garfield. I mean, it's hard to not remember that just happened
3 years ago.
Yeah, and before that, it seemed like it was almost too early to do it. From the Tobey Maguire. At that point, we were so naive back then.
Right.
But, I think that's a lot. It's saying a lot about this movie that it can be original, interesting, and stand on its own when this is just, it easily could have been one more retread of a character.
Right.
So, kudos to them.
Well, and it sounds like,
kudos to John Watts.
Well, and dropping him into the last movie, the Captain America movie, and doing the tie-in with Tony Stark, and having him kind of introduce him in.
Well,
like
you
said,
need
Tony Stark
Robert Downey Jr.
Off.
He runs the show.
Right.
He is the guy that makes Marvel work, and that's another reason why Iron Man is a good choice.
Seeing some comments just to keep going back, and we'll keep going back to your comments on what the best superhero movie of all time is. Deadpool, because Scott is saying
a great
there were
choice.
Whispers for Best Picture nominations.
Such a cool movie. Yeah.
Tom Holland is head, shoulders, knees, and above. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. I mean, and so far what we've seen of Tom Holland, he does seem like he'd make a perfect Spider-Man.
And to say a few things about Spider-Man, as we're going to be rolling into that, a little bit too, is what's interesting about Tom Holland is he played Billy Elliot on the stage, so he has this sort of dance acrobat background, and that was one of the things that Rick Marshall said that he brought to the table. There's this sort of he's got that look to his movements already, which kind of makes him inherently a great Spider-Man choice.
Yeah,
because Spider-Man is basically an acrobat.
Yeah,
so
and
that's pretty cool,
and that's true. So
him and Robin.
Robin. Okay, yeah, Batman and Robin, best superhero movie of all time.
Oh no! Oh my God! No, that might be the worst.
I'm seeing a lot of Captain America: Civil War come through, and I can kind of
that's interesting.
I can see that. I mean, Captain America: Civil War. I mean, it's basically an Avengers movie.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, and I loved Ant-Man in that. Giant Man in that. That was so cool.
Yeah.
And the battle scene. I would say that might be one of the best battle scenes ever. But to come back to what we were saying about a few of these, we were saying Heath Ledger was so important. A lot of these movies, as it does for almost all movies, the villain plays such an integral role, if not the most integral role, to what makes one of these movies great.
Yeah.
I mean, Avengers wouldn't have been nearly as cool without Loki.
And Loki's my favorite
without
character.
that kind of a criminal, with that kind of a villain,
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with everyone. I really liked, the Big Lebowski himself, Jeff Bridges' character in Iron Man too. I thought he was such a cool turn. It was so cool to see him be his friend and then turn on him in such a cold way.
Yeah, I guess it's been a while since I've seen Iron Man.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just all on Iron Man here.
You are very pro Iron Man. All right, well, we know where you stand on that.
All right. Well, anyway, so Spider-Man's out. We think it's going to be great. It very well might be the best one yet. So we definitely, obviously, recommend you see it. And also because there's not much else at as far as blockbusters at the box office.
There's not. We've got a lot more to talk about though with Marvel and the Avengers. I mean, I guess I'll say there's one other movie that's out right now that you could check out just for the weekend box office before we go to some new news about Marvel, and it's called A Ghost Story. That's another movie you can check out with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara and Will Oldham.
This is going to be.
We're not going to talk about this.
If you're looking for the exact opposite, it's going to be this. It's basically about a guy who dies and he becomes a ghost, sort of lost in time, and it's sort of this philosophical idea of what a ghost is. It looks interesting to me. I think this is the anti blockbuster.
That looks interesting, or it's a complete snoozer. I don't know if I'm going to watch that one or not.
Well, the problem is you're going to have a hard time finding this in theaters unless you got a really nice small local theater next to you.
All right. Well, there's that. Let's get back to superheroes.
All right. Let's do that.
So, after with Spider-Man doing so well, we did find out a bunch more things about Marvel over this last week, and in particular, dealing with Avengers: Infinity War, which is going to be out May 4th, 2018. We got to see some pictures that have come out from the set, and it looks like we're getting an idea of who the villain is going to be, and it sounds like it's going to be a character, Ebony Maw. And Ebony Maw is one of Thanos's. This is not to go too deep, but if you've been watching the Marvel movies, you know who Thanos is. That's the ultimate villain.
Yeah, I mean, Thanos is going to be the villain, isn't he? But this is going to be sort of...
Thanos is going to be the villain in the one after that.
Oh, okay.
So right now, this is one of Thanos' main sidekicks.
Right.
Is that Ebony Maw. So that's what the character actually looks like. And the picture that came out from the set shows a guy in the CGI gear attacking... Doctor Strange.
Okay.
And so they're thinking that's who that's going to be. This person's going to be Ebony Maw as the main villain. A couple other things from the set. It turns out Jeremy Renner broke both of his arms.
Oh, my
on
God.
the set. Yeah, broke an elbow and a wrist. on set doing some kind of a
That does
stunt.
not sound fun.
No, that does not sound fun.
Well, at least they're
all.
giving it their all. And, he might be doing that for, 5 minutes of screen time? I mean, we have so many superheroes in this movie, it's like a joke. If someone told you that this was going to happen 10 years ago, you'd be like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
There's no way they could pull this off. Yeah, and have
We've got all of the Guardians of the Galaxy, all of the essentially
like
every superhero from
everybody.
every Avengers film, from every MCU film of note.
All the side characters, all the ancillary
Paul Rudd
characters.
and Ant-Man are going to be there. Everybody's
Probably
gonna be there.
Loki will show up, I'm sure.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, this is going to be how you even make a movie like this. I don't know, but and fit that many different people.
Right.
There was even a picture that came out showing Hulk with. God, now I'm forgetting the characters' names. One of Doctor Strange's buddies from the movie, and I forget the character's name. Yeah, right there, interacting with the Hulk. So it's just like it's going to be a mix of everybody all thrown into the same thing.
Well, and so that's what's so interesting is now Marvel has essentially with this arc, the 3 phases, all these movies, has created probably, if you looked at it broadly, the most popular franchise of any kind ever. With the
this
MCU.
many movies?
I would have to say I've never done the numbers.
How many James Bond movies are there?
Yeah, I guess you could throw something like James Bond in there, but they just don't make that kind of money because they're older, and there just wasn't that kind of money being thrown around.
No, I think you're right. It's
but
gotta be.
What's interesting about all that is that the president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, I think, said that as of the end of Infinity Wars, that is the end of the entire, I think it's 22 film arc.
Yeah. So the 22,
the whole thing ends with that,
and so that was kind of the big announcement. So they're saying this is going to be the run up to the end, the Infinity Wars 2 or Avengers 4 or whatever they end up calling it.
And I think we kind of knew that, but it's interesting to think about this fact. I mean, they are looking at the end of this arc, and it has been the entire build from Iron Man.
22 movies over 11 years,
right?
11 or 12 years, May of 2019,
and it started in 2008 with Iron Man.
2008, yeah. So it'll be all those movies. 22 movies all involved in this story arc will come to a conclusion in this 4th Avengers movie.
And not only that, but contracts for as integral players as Robert Downey Jr. we talked about, who's sort of the steward of this entire thing. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Jeremy Renner, Scarlett Johansson, all their contracts are up, and actors like Hemsworth, Renner, and RDJ have all said, we're pretty much going to walk away.
Yeah.
So the thing is, although this arc is done, of course the MCU is not going to be done. Disney is going to make money as much as long as it can. The question is, will this start to bring on that dreaded thing we were talking about, which is the superhero saturation? Well, because how does the MCU continue without its biggest stars and without its biggest players?
You either have to recast or they're going to bank on the side ones, which Spider-Man is going to be a big superhero.
Spider-Man is
banking
that's
on.
why they paid that's why they made this big deal with Sony, who owns the rights to make this Spider-Man movie together, is because they're hoping Spider-Man is he's young, he's gonna be their next thing that's gonna propel this forward.
That will launch it out to this new universe of characters,
which starts with the second Spider-Man movie, if I understand it correctly.
That's correct. Yeah, Spider-Man will come after this 4th Avengers movie. And then also you'll get Captain Marvel around that same time. Captain Marvel will be introduced
with Brie Larson as Carol Danvers.
Now, this is where you get into a rough patch, though, because Spider-Man's a big enough character you can carry a lot of movies with
He's
Spider-Man.
right up there with Batman and Superman, and as far as my knowledge.
Sure.
When I was a kid, those were the 3.
Absolutely. But if you start phasing out all these other characters, then you got to bring in people like Captain Marvel, which maybe it's going to be great, but
he was big in the 40s. Well, he and she. Eventually she.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just such a smaller character. It's going to be really hard to carry that with it.
And will people turn their noses at the MCU? Of course not. But it's just going to be interesting to see how they can bring this on. Again, it's been Robert Downey Jr. sort of showing up in every movie, as he does again in Spider-Man, and making sure. I think he's going to have 12 under his belt by the time he gets done or something.
Yeah.
I haven't tallied it all up, but it's right around there.
In the chat, Keelan saying, dude, they made Ant-Man work. Do you think they can't do it? No, and that's true.
We're not saying they can't do it. It's just going to be interesting to see.
But Ant-Man's even more
and it's
well
not
known
and
than
it does,
Marvel.
and it didn't make nearly as much money as the other ones. Let's remember that too.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be interesting to see how they try to carry this forward.
Yeah. So that's kind of the news. This is everything that we've learned so far about Marvel. I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more over these next coming weeks.
Yeah, a couple other things in that just quickly is Nick Fury is rumored to be in Captain Marvel, and we also think he's going to be in Infinity War. So
that's true. I mean, Nick Fury is a good,
bringing old Samuel
character.
Jack back.
Yeah. He's always a good one to throw in there. So. we'll see what happens. But there it is, Spider-Man. Anyway, go see it. I'm gonna go see it this weekend and get caught up with that. Yeah,
damn
I have
right
to go
you
see
are.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man. Let's get on to some other news. We do have some other things to talk about here as we go through this show.
Yeah.
So we'll continue coming back to that question though. So let us know what you think is the best superhero movie of all time. We do have some news about another movie that's out in the theater right now, which I hate the name of, but
Baby Driver.
Baby Driver.
Yeah.
Apparently, it is really, really a great movie, and there's already talk about a Baby Driver sequel. Now,
So this
have
is
you seen
interesting. I have seen it.
Okay.
We really enjoyed it. For me, there are some interesting things at play at the end of the movie, which I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, no spoilers.
But what is really fun about it is Ansel Elgort is amazing in it. He does some things that you would find. It's like one of those things where you're like, I don't know how actors can do that and not be embarrassed. He sort of just dances around at certain times because this movie is so involved with the music that's in it. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but the music is a major, major driving force, almost unlike any other heist film, or definitely unlike any other heist film, and unlike pretty much anything that isn't a musical. Okay. But Ansel Elgort is great in it. But so it's interesting that I don't want to, spoil again about the sequel either, but it will be interesting to see how they make this sequel, given the ending of the original Baby Driver. But for those who haven't seen it, or for those who are interested in it, it is a really fun heist flick. It's going to be unlike anything you've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see how people think about the ending. But yeah, some of the things that Edgar Wright said about what he's going to do is the studio has asked me to think about writing a sequel, and it's funny that Baby Driver is one of the ones that I might do a sequel to. He hasn't really done sequels before. He's done sort of movies that sort of fit in the same universe.
Okay.
With Simon Pegg.
Simon, right.
His creative, they write the movies together, and they did stuff like Shaun of the Dead and all that other stuff. But it would be really interesting, and for those who have seen Baby Driver, write hints. I think with Baby Driver, there's more that you can do in that realm, and I sort of have an idea that if you did another one, you would subvert his involvement in the crimes in a different way, so he's no longer the apprentice. It's not giving too much away to say that Baby Driver is sort of like working with all these really terrible criminals, but he's this like young kid, and he's not quite. His hands aren't quite as dirty as everybody else's. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So they're saying that the sequel could make him less that way and more of like a straight up criminal
character. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Everybody I've talked to that's seen Baby Driver loves it, so I will give it a shot. I'm sorry, Spider-Man's going to sit ahead of in the list
I would
of movies
see Spider-Man first too, but Baby Driver is a fun one, and it's something totally different. And as we talk about superhero movies, they're fun and everything, but the world needs different movies too, especially Hollywood. Like we need some new ideas. That's why it's fun to have stuff like this.
Taking a look here, we've got some comments coming in on Facebook and YouTube. Going back to the original question, I want to revisit that. Yeah. Alan says, just spread out the movies more after the end of the 22 movie arc, which is the second Infinity War, whatever they're going to call it, Avengers 4, and make Hawkeye and Black Widow a spy movie, Guardians of the Galaxy science fiction, Thor alien movies. That's not a bad idea, although you'd have to still
lean
have those
further
actors.
Into the feel. Yeah.
Thor, I think Hemsworth is probably going to quit.
Yes.
But I'm sure you could probably get Hawkeye and Black Widow to do
Chris Hemsworth is Thor. It's going to be so hard. I mean,
I don't know.
You can't replace Iron Man. You can't replace Thor.
Well, that's like replacing Heath Ledger as the Joker. Yeah. I mean, it's an almost impossible task.
And you can look to the comics to sort of figure out, new ways that those characters lean, because there's all kinds of arteries that break off, but still.
But does that work for a movie?
Yeah, it should be hard.
That's going to be a tough thing.
Yep.
So, again, we'll keep on coming back to that. We have some other things to talk about, though, and this I really wanted to bring up.
Different kinds of stories.
Yeah, I am so excited to talk about this. It's on Netflix. It's a new series called Glow. You've probably seen more people talk about it recently. Glow, just to give the backstory in case you don't know, Glow was an actual a women's wrestling organization that did exist in the late 80s, early 90s. It stands for Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And the whole thing was super cheesy. They all, like these wrestlers back then, they would be like a stereotype of a stereotype where they're characters.
It's like shot with a camcorder, too.
Yeah, terribly shot, but so funny. And they would each come up with like their own rap. You can look it up and see the original Glow videos online.
All that stuff is based off that Super Bowl shuffle. Everybody was like playing off the Super Bowl shuffle back then.
Yeah, and the series came out on Netflix a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of put it off. It wasn't really on the top of my list to watch. Well, that was a mistake. I've now watched this entire series. I blew through the entire thing, and it is one of the best original series that Netflix has ever come out with. And I say that knowing full well all of their other series.
That's amazing. And I have always loved Alison Brie. I think she's just shines in everything she's in, from Mad Men to Community. She's just like a very interesting talent. Marc Maron, speaking of podcasts, is one of, if not the best podcaster of all time. And so I'm a big fan of him. He's a funny guy too. So it's interesting to see him in something like this.
Well, Marc Maron, and I can say this having met him a couple times, is also a real jerk.
Oh yeah, well he's known for his like crazy behaviors.
Yeah, and which is why he is perfect for this. It's like he's not even acting. I mean, he is great. He is great in this series. He really is a great actor in this, and so is Alison Brie. But the thing is, it's not just those two, and that's what surprised me because I knew those two names. Everybody else in there is also perfectly cast.
Yeah, and you won't know most of these people, but there's some interesting names.
Yeah, well, Betty Gilpin.
Or faces, I should say.
She was in Nurse Jackie.
I've seen her in some stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
She is phenomenal in this. So the whole series, I mean, it's lighthearted. There's serious moments. It focuses on them forming Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. I cannot recommend it enough. It is such a fun watch. Great series. Absolutely a great series. The worst part is at the end, you're like, I want more.
Yeah, well, that's what they're going for.
Vicky's asking how long are the episodes. I think they average about a half hour.
Yeah, it's a quick one.
Yeah, so you can watch it easily. Some of them are a little longer, some a little shorter. But yeah, right about a half hour.
I did hear Marc Maron talking about this on a talk show, and I hate to hear that he's like a jerk because he seems so great on his podcast. But then you hear all these stories of all these fights he's had throughout the years.
And I don't want to.
I've heard he's chilled out lately, but yeah,
I've met him a couple of times. He's not. I mean, he's a jerk, but that's just who he is.
Yeah, totally. He's just that way.
He's just that.
But one of the interesting things he was saying is they brought him on, and the women who created this series were like, well, we're going to have it like this. And he's like, that's not how cokeheads are, because he used to be a cokehead.
Yeah.
And his character's a cokehead, and he's like, well, what we need to put this coke in little bindles, and he like measures it out for his daily stuff, and they're like, we're so glad to have you here. Because he's like essentially a drug addict consultant.
No, and that's I mean, in this series, like
he should get a second paycheck for his drug addict consulting.
There is no one that I could possibly think of that can play that role like Marc Maron.
Nice.
Yeah, everybody's so perfectly cast. So anyway, Glow, check that out on Netflix. That is my big recommendation for the week. A couple other things on Netflix. The Castlevania animated series has now come out.
And it has also now already been renewed. In Netflix fashion, yeah.
And they're already talking about bringing in another animated series from the same creator who did the Castlevania one. He's going to do one with Assassin's Creed. So, which kind of makes sense, actually. Assassin's Creed, I could totally see
as an animated so much better than trying to do that live action movie.
Yeah,
which obviously didn't work out so great.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a much better way to do it.
Much better. You can really tell that story.
You can create the fluid action of the guys climbing around and everything,
and it would make more sense.
Yeah,
animated series, I could definitely see that. So you're going to get an Assassin's Creed animated series. And a couple other things for Netflix, just continuing on with their documentaries. They've got one coming out on August 4th called Icarus. And this Icarus one is it's the behind-the-scenes story of all of the Russian athletes who were busted for using performance-enhancing drugs, which is pretty much all of them.
Yeah, they basically
of the Russians
were completely denounced.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many of them that were banned from the Olympics.
Yeah.
So that it's going to be an interesting documentary. I'm amazed he's still alive, that he's gone in depth with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, that Putin is so hot right now.
Yeah. He is. Yeah, that's where the money's at.
Yep.
And then there's also going to be one with the Central Park 5, which, again, if you don't know that, it's 5 guys who were accused of a horrible crime in New York back in the, spring of '89.
Yeah.
And this documentary, or it's not, I guess it's not necessarily going to be a documentary. It's going to be a series. I take that back. A series about those guys and their lives and what they went through before they were finally vindicated with DNA evidence and acquitted of everything because they didn't do it.
Yeah, and that was like one of the strangest trials. It was like this hype thing that they were doing.
Yeah,
and it was racist and it had all kinds of implications. So this should be interesting.
That will be interesting. So again, just kind of wrapping up what Netflix is doing right now. Glow, though, that is my recommendation on Netflix. Glow. 100%.
That's quite a glowing okay, sorry, I didn't.
Do we have a dump button or anything that we can drop?
I was up late last night.
See if we can like delete that from.
Yeah, we can cut that out of the podcast.
All right.
Podcasters, don't worry about what we're talking about because you missed that one.
Yeah, no, I'm leaving it in. Keelan's asking, did he write that? Yeah, that's a good question.
Oh,
I
God.
don't know. It's written into the script. Going back to our original question, though, just to keep people, keep you informed on that, we're kind of going through a bunch of different movie and television news right now. But what is the best superhero movie of all time? That is still our overriding question, talking about Spider-Man being out in theaters right now. Ryan is clearly Iron Man, I think.
I think I just coming back. I keep coming back to it.
I think, if we're just going with the movie, now you could also go with the television series if you went with like Luke Cage. Because that's really good, too.
I don't know that it stands up to some of the cinematics, but...
Yeah, that's a tough choice. It's a tough choice if you start throwing
Great
that
soundtrack.
Yeah.
Killer soundtrack.
It is a good soundtrack. So let us know what you think. Tony says he knows the worst of all time, so we're also in for the worst of all time.
Yeah, we also want to hear the worst.
Yeah. Couple other things, updates on reboots and sequels and that are always happening in Hollywood right now. This is a sequel series that is happening based off of Sons of Anarchy. Now, if you watch Sons of Anarchy, I was a fan of Sons of Anarchy. Said it a million times, went way too long, about 3 seasons too long.
Yeah.
But we are now going to get a sequel. And originally, it was supposed to be a prequel. This is going to be a sequel taking place right after the end of the series Sons of Anarchy, focusing on the Mayans MC. So the Mayans were kind of one of the rival club, and this isn't giving a spoiler away for the series. They're a rival club. There's sometimes partnership. That's how everything is in Sons of Anarchy. Sometimes you're friends, sometimes you're not. Mayans MC, though, is largely the Hispanic motorcycle club, and so this is going to be a series focusing on them and their rise and fall and everything that goes on with it. I'm excited to see this.
Well, it should be interesting because Kurt Sutter has had, he pulled off, he had a new series, what was it? It was a fantasy series.
Yes,
and now
I'm
forgetting the name of it, but he pulled it himself because they weren't getting the viewers.
Well, that's why there's been some issues with this because this has been planned for several years now.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, and what's been happening now, they're reshooting the pilot. They recast some of the people, which would suck if you were one of those actors. Like, oh, yeah, sweet, I'm going to be in the new Mayans MC. And they're like, no one's ever going to see you in that. So they're recasting and reshooting a bunch of it. So there's some kinds of issues going on. We'll see when we actually get to see this, but I'm excited for it. Hopefully they can make it stand out a little bit differently than Sons of Anarchy. It's not the same kind of premise over and over. But that is some updates on that. So they are reshooting some of that. We also got a release date for Top Gun 2. Top Gun 2 is happening, the release date being July 12th of 2019.
Bastard Executioner. That's what we were looking for, Alex.
There you go. You did it. You did it. You brought it back.
Yep, there it is.
So,
Top Gun 2. Still going to be weird. We've talked about it. We think they're going to focus on drone warfare. We're pretty sure Val Kilmer is going to be back.
Yeah, you would hope.
Even though he's overweight now. But
it's
going to be interesting to see how they write him back in. He doesn't look like he's been in the military for the last 20 years. He has not been living that military life.
Money and a trainer.
But Tom Cruise still looks good.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Bouncing back, so we've got just a couple of other things to talk about, and then we'll end with some Game of Thrones news. But I do see this. Roberto says the first X-Men movie, directed by Bryan Singer, set the standard for modern comic material. Yeah, I mean, it was really good. The very first X-Men movie. Yeah, it was good.
I liked it.
Also says that Favreau perfected it with Iron Man.
Yeah, so I mean, that was what was fun is that Favreau, that was kind of his first big movie like that, too. Yep.
Yeah, so there we go. Some other news that is happening, some more reboot recap stuff. Just one more to bring up. And there are some very big super fans of this movie. Heathers was from 1988.
I always keep meaning to watch it, and I never... It's always been on the list, and I've never seen it, and we keep meaning to watch it.
I dated a girl named Heather, and this was her favorite movie of all time, so I had to see it several times.
And it's Christian Slater, right?
Yeah, Christian Slater.
And Winona Ryder.
Christian Slater, I believe Winona Ryder was in the original one. Shannon Doherty, and it was about 3 girls named Heather at this high school who were just like terrors. Yeah. And now... they are going to make it into a television series. Selma Blair was just cast as one of the Heathers' moms, and the Heathers have been reimagined as let's see, and I'm going to quote what they're saying in a different way. So you've got one Heather who is apparently, according to the press release, a lesbian. One is the normal kind of Heather jerk who was like the original one, and then one is a transgender Heather.
Yeah, so you can see
it's
the image
going to
right
be
there.
3
It's
Heathers.
Definitely different than the movie.
Different than the other one. So that's how the series is going to work. And there's going to be appearances by Shannon Doherty, supposedly. So we'll see how that's.
That seems like quite the ambitious setting.
It's ambitious.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what that movie is anymore? Too, it's
Heathers.
Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's so long.
It's a particular
after.
audience that's gonna understand that.
Yeah, it's people in their 30s like us.
Yeah, exactly. So final couple of things here to bring into True Detective season 3. We've been hearing rumors that this may finally happen, that we're going to be getting this. I guess Nick Pizzolatto, who was the creator and head writer, has been working on the new season, but they don't have any stars cast for it yet. The first 2 episodes are already written. Now there is the word that Mahershala Ali may be the star of the new series, which would be perfect.
Great idea.
Perfect.
He's awesome.
I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great idea to bring him in. I mean, you need a partner in there, somebody, because usually you have the 2 stars in all of these things. But
also,
that's a great cast.
Super ripped. Did you see him in this new commercial? It's like ridiculous. He's like boxer ripped.
No.
So he needs to get himself a superhero role. Like, seriously.
Well, no, I can't spoil anything.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't spoiling anything because you see it in the first episode. He's in Luke Cage.
Well, I know he's in Luke Cage. I mean, he needs to be a superhero.
Well, I think it's too late. Once you're already in that, well, I guess DC.
Nah,
you go to
you
DC.
can be in all kinds of stuff, man.
All right. Anyway, that's a great idea to cast him.
Yeah.
Let's see. Bouncing through just to our last couple of things. I'm not even going to talk about The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, you should talk about this because this angers me.
The Handmaid's Tale, the author and creator of The Handmaid's Tale, if you haven't seen that, also another great series. Margaret Atwood, fantastic first season. Really hard to watch because it's so tough to see, but it is really good. Now it's come out and said that she wants Drake to have a cameo in season 2. Which
I don't even know what that means, but all Greg wrote down was no.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. No. Drake should not have a cameo.
I will say this. First of all,
Handmaid's Tale.
Drake knows how to print money, so good for him. I do not like his music, but I will say that he is a better actor, in my opinion, than he is a musician.
He's a good actor.
He's a pretty good actor. He was on SNL. The music parts were terrible.
Yeah.
The acting parts were pretty good.
Yeah, no,
So,
he's a
who
good
knows?
actor, but he's Drake.
Yeah.
It's just going to take so much away from that story.
That's too Drakey.
You can't have a big name cameo in The Handmaid's Tale.
I think you might be right.
It's just no.
That's why they went with Joseph Fiennes instead of Ray Fiennes.
There
See?
we go.
See?
Okay.
Yep.
Tied it back in. Mm-hmm. All right. Final couple of things here to bring up. I do have to bring up this trailer, which has been coming out all over the place. I've seen so much news about it.
And as I said at the beginning of the show, if Gerard Butler's in it, you know it's going to be terrible.
Gerard Butler and Andy Garcia starring in Geostorm.
Which is also a car that you do not want to own. Well, this is a movie that you do not want to watch.
Well, it's coming out on October 20th, and it's based around the premise that in the future, we have put up satellites that can control the weather around the world.
It's actually a cool premise.
Until somebody hacks the satellites.
Yeah, that was the problem.
So it seems to me what they did is they took a look at like all the past super disaster movies. Like, okay.
Yeah. They made it's an Armageddon structure.
Right.
Like the undercurrent is Armageddon. It's Michael Bay like Armageddon.
They liked Twister.
Yeah.
Let's give them
and
Twister.
you can tell that with the new trailer. Like they super Armageddoned it. Like as far as the new trailer, it looks just like a ragtag band.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like all this. There's a terrible line that one of the
Volcano?
astronauts says.
Let's give them Volcano. Deep Impact? Sure.
The Gerard Butler like goes into space, and the first thing like one of the characters up in space says, "Wow, I didn't think he was gonna look so old."
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Hilarious.
Really funny. Great writing.
Yeah. Day After Tomorrow? Give them Day After Tomorrow. So it's all the disasters thrown into one as chaos ensues around the globe. Andy Garcia is the president, which just kind of says a lot right there. Which Andy Garcia, I mean, at one time...
He used to be a star. We were talking about it. He's not really a star anymore.
Yeah, no.
This movie has like no stars. Although, is Ed Harris in it? I thought I said Ed Harris. He's a star.
This is going to be a movie I will watch on some 4-hour plane ride when they only offer 2 different options.
I will
It's
not.
going to be this and some romantic comedy, and I'll be like, fine, I'll watch Geostorm. That is
I don't
when I'll
know if
watch
they're
it.
going to show this on a plane because the coolest thing I saw in the entire start was a plane ice up and fall on the ground and shatter like Terminator 2 when they hit the... hit the frozen nitrous.
That's the only way I watch San Andreas, though. I mean, so that's how I watch that. So anyway, Geostorm.
Yeah.
All right, finally, we're going to wrap up with something, and then we do want to get your questions and answers. Anybody does still have something for the best superhero or worst superhero movie of all time. I want to bring this up because next week We're going to be talking about Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Game of Thrones
and guess
is
what?
premiering next Sunday.
Yeah.
Week from Sunday.
If it seems like it's been way too long, it's because it has.
It's been a long time. But Game of Thrones is returning.
We had that whole Westworld thing in the middle of it.
Yeah, and now HBO has announced there is going to be a tour of a Game of Thrones exhibition tour.
Yeah.
And what they're going to be doing is, quote, bringing the fictional land of Westeros to cities all around the world. And it's going to be a display, like an interactive display you can go into. They released one image where you can walk in and presumably you can get a picture on the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
And I guess they're going to have different kinds of things. They said there'll be some wintry landscapes of the north, the tree-lined pathway of the King's Road, and the regal settings of King's Landing.
I so don't care about any of this. But good. I mean, I guess if it shows up in your town.
I'll go to it. I know I will.
You're going to get a picture on the Iron Throne?
Yes. And I'll make it my profile picture.
It looks
for
extremely
like a day.
uncomfortable.
Yes, I will totally be that guy.
But more importantly,
yes,
next week we are going to be talking about 5 major Game of Thrones fan theories.
Yes.
And which ones we think are going to come true.
So that's going to
And I already know which ones are going to come true.
Okay.
And all I can say is Queenslayer.
I disagree.
Yeah, well,
so
there it is.
We're going to be talking about that on next week's episode of Between the Streams. We'll cover Game of Thrones and our fan theories, and we'd love to hear yours. You can send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com, and let us know what your fan theories are. And just wrapping up again, we love the superhero discussions, and we love talking about everything with you all that listen in on and watch on Facebook and YouTube. It's a ton of fun discussing these things. So your final answer, best superhero movie ever, was Iron Man?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go Avengers. I'm going to go
Avengers.
Avengers because Loki's the star. That's
there
why.
You go.
Loki's my favorite. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But let us know your comments, your questions, your opinions on best superhero movie, television, movie or television series, or anything else that we've talked about today in the comments. Or send us an email and tune in every Friday live at 2 p.m. Pacific time and join us for this entire discussion. It's been a ton of fun.
Or check out the podcast.
Don't
forget about the podcast
on iTunes, the audio version of this show. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in there.
We're there.
And subscribe to those because that way you can make sure you get it every week when it comes out. And I think that's about it for today. So thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode.